Welcome to another installment of Outspoken. I am your host, Dan Sileo, and it is the calm before the storm. Guys, fire the cannons. What a great week ahead when it comes to Super Bowl 60. Seahawks and Patriots, the two best teams in the National Football League. And folks, I will tell you this. You got two defensive-minded guys going into this ball game with Mike McDonald and also Mike Vrabel. And these two teams are ready to roll in what I think is going to be an iconic Super Bowl. These two football teams have had exceptional years, especially the Patriots with being 9-0 on the road. You look at what the Seahawks have done in the NFC West and how they've gone through that division. Arguably one of the best divisions, if not the best division in all of football, with the Rams and the 49ers there. This Seahawks team has been led by this man right here. Sam Darnold has had a magical season. JSN has been special all season long, solidifying himself as one of the best wide receivers in all of pro football. Make no mistake about it, the running game with Kenny Walker has been exceptional. They do lose Charbonneau, and the Seahawks looking to go and win another Super Bowl. How about those Patriots, man? Make no mistake about it. What an iconic run for this team. You know, just a couple years ago, we were looking at the Patriots as being a football team. Would they ever get back to greatness with Brady and with Belichick and what those two men did? Well, here they are. Mike Vrabel and Drake May have another opportunity. Bob Kraft, who may go into the Pro Football Hall of Fame next Thursday, has another opportunity, his 11th, for that trophy right there, the Vince Lombardi trophy. How incredible is that? I mean, think about where they were a couple of years ago when everyone said the dynasty was over. If you're the Buffalo Bills and you're Terry Pegula, the owner of the Bills, and you're Brandon Beane, you had 4.5 years of trying to catch that team, and here they are in Santa Clara with an opportunity to win the Super Bowl. Incredible. Speaking of the Patriots, what a storyline this year when it came to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, I don't know what else to say here. 334 victories. Bill Belichick being reported that he's being snubbed as a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, 8 Super Bowls. You know, you can make the argument about Bill Belichick. Is he the greatest coach of all time? I say he is. He coached 2 of the greatest football players in the history of the game, Tom Brady and also Lawrence Taylor. The things he did in New England. Hey, you know, the iconic building of those franchises and given the autonomy by Bob Kraft to be able to go in there with people like Scott Pioli, the general manager, Nick Caserio, bring that great talent. How many times did we see the New England Patriots? They had a 10-year gap in between all those Super Bowls. Bill Belichick, the greatest coach in pro football history. Now, I'll say this to you about these 50 voters. You're either this. You're either jealous or you're a rear end. I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, Bill Polian, who I have absolutely no respect for, who is a constant liar in everything he says. I mean, one, he says, I misremember. Then on the other hand, here's a guy also with Tony Dungy, if you remember right. You know what Deflategate was about? Deflategate was all about the AFC Championship game the year previous. And to me, you talk about a guy who had an ass with getting his rear end kicked all the time by the Patriots. This guy's sitting in a Hall of Fame room with 50 men with Coach Dungy, and those guys are influencing the opportunity to put this man in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because your butt hurt? I mean, guys, you got to put personal feelings aside. You know, I was always told that, make no mistake about it, you know, when you have an opportunity, I vote for the Heisman Trophy, I vote for all these college football awards, and whether or not I like the Gators or I like Florida State or I like this or that, the best guy gets the opportunity to go into the Hall of Fame based on merit, not based on pouting. And that's what Bill Polian has done. I don't believe a word this guy says. Then he's coming around walking back going, hey, I voted for him. Well, we're going to find out next Thursday if you voted for this guy. I absolutely have no respect for this guy. Here's a guy that also said this a couple years ago, that he came out and said, oh, yeah, we knew we had a first-round grade on Tom Brady when he came out of Michigan. Everybody started laughing. Not one person, not one organization had a first-round grade on Tom Brady. And he's trying to constantly change the narrative. You know what the disappointing thing was here? Is that 50 writers, some of them, tried to change history of the game. That's my problem with it. You can't say the NFL and tell the story of the National Football League without Bill Belichick. You can't. You could tell the story of the NFL without Bill Polian. You can't tell the story of this man right here. 302 wins. You count his 31 wins in the postseason, that number may never be touched. Andy Reid has a shot, but that number right there. And you know what people will say? Well, it was all Brady. Really? Was it all Joe Montana with Bill Walsh? Was it all Terry Bradshaw with Chuck Noll? Was it all Peyton Manning with Coach Dungy? Every single great coach has been tied to a great quarterback. Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman. There's really only one coach in pro football history that was really not tied to one quarterback, and that was Joe Gibbs, who won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, which may never be done again. Belichick's history was reversed in a way. First ballot? If Bill Belichick's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, no one is. And just to show you something else, here's the country we live in today, and here's the era we live in. You're telling me that Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler with a 56.6 completion percentage, 7 TDs, and 10 picks. He's a Pro Bowler, but Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Fame guy? That's where we live in today's society? Is that media darlings like Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler and Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer? That's wild. Shedeur Sanders is not the future of the Cleveland Browns. I mean, he's not. They've got 2 first-round picks. Now, I don't think this class of quarterbacks is all that much to shake a stick at. Outside of the top guy, Fernando Mendoza, I look at the quarterbacks in the room, and quite frankly, none of those guys really are going to be, in my opinion, a frontline face of the franchise. However, we know one thing about the National Football League and how they look at the quarterback position. They're going to overvaluate like they always do. They're going to oversell somebody like they always do. And at least three guys probably will go into the NFL draft. And somehow by the draft in April, you're going to see 3 names that are going to emerge, in my opinion, that are going to be first-round draft choices. And there's no question about it. Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler, and Bill Belichick is not a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, what a storyline it's been this week. Usually, when you have it in the bye, you don't really have an opportunity really to have a lot of sports stories, but we got one here. Hey, don't forget my great friends at Morgan & Morgan, the #1 injury law firm in all of America for a reason, my friends. It's because they win. That's right. With over $30 billion recovered, a family in Pennsylvania was initially offered $650K. They ended up getting $26 million. Do me a favor. Go to forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. That's forthepeople.com/big sales or pound law 529. My great friends at Morgan & Morgan, we appreciate you more than you know. We're going to talk with our friend Joe Lisi. We're going to get a preview on Super Bowl 60. Also, we're going to take a look at the NFL draft, and we're going to start looking at that. Do me a favor. We got the calm before the storm right here. Keep it here on Sports Grid.
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. SportsGrid breaks it all down.
They are locks. We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on SportsGrid.
Stacking up wins to avoid a brutal matchup path, and when Giannis is back full burst, they got to get him back on the floor and back on the floor healthy. The Bucs season won't be defined by the game Giannis misses. It'll be defined whether Milwaukee protects him from himself and gets him back in April if he's still a part of the team.
Pro basketball today. Only on SportsGrid.
ESPN are not going to take shots or criticize him. People on Fox are not going to take shots and criticize him. But McVay had a bad game. Sean Payton had a bad game. And that's just a fact. Like, when they go back and review what took place in key spots of that game, Sean Payton cost the Broncos points and Sean McVay cost the Rams points. Those are the first two people that should be blamed.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
The dominant story, obviously, heading into Super Bowl 60 has to be the Bill Belichick story. We're going to preview Super Bowl 60 with our friend Joe Lisi here. But, hey, Joe, I got to get your take on this thing here, man. There's some people on this aisle, on this side over here, that think that the guy should not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then there's most people, and I'm in that camp, 334 victories in 8 Super Bowls. I'm not sure what the debate is, Joe.
Me neither, Dan. Thanks for having me. And it's amazing when you talk about voters and their perception of a 6-time Super Bowl champion in Bill Belichick. And I understand the negativity surrounding Spygate, but let's not forget, Bill Belichick was the main reason why Tom Brady potentially won 7 Super Bowls. He made him the starter after Drew Bledsoe got hurt against the New York Jets. And I think everybody's forgetting as well, one of the most dominant defensive coordinators in all of the league before he became a head coach. I mean, his tenure with the New York Giants and Bill Parcells, I think, goes unrecognized. And we talk about the dominance of Lawrence Taylor and the dominant New York Giant defenses. I mean, it's ridiculous that this guy has to wait while others are put in year number 1.
Absolutely. And if you go back and you just mentioned it, you know, that second Super Bowl that he won in New York, Joe, I mean, it was one of the greatest game plans against the K-Gun and Jim Kelly, where that they were rushing only 2 or 3 guys on that team. And he orchestrated one of the greatest defenses of all time. You know, if they're going to use this metric, don't you think that this affects Brady then? I mean, if you're going to hold Spygate and Deflategate, and actually, if you think about Deflategate, you know, Tom Brady was suspended 4 games for that, and Belichick really wasn't implicated in that, but he was the overseer, obviously, of the team. If the Hall of Fame voters are going to use that metric, doesn't that affect Brady on being a first ballot?
You would think, right? The consistency, obviously, being the Super Bowl quarterback, and the main reason why we talk about the balls being deflated was for Tom Brady specifically. You'd think that they would hold him accountable as well, but the perception, and I just, from reading and what you hear, is that the people that were, let's just say, on Bill Belichick not to be in the Hall of Fame on a first ballot have given Brady the benefit of the doubt because he won a Super Bowl when he left New England with Tampa Bay in his first year. I'm not suggesting it's right. I love Tom Brady. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best all time. And I think Bill Belichick, to me, is still the best head coach, and he's proved that. But this is what you get when you have the human element, and there's no real metrics when you break down this type of voting except for objection and perception, which is absolutely ridiculous, Dan.
Absolutely. Let's kick it over to the game. Two best teams, in your opinion, in Santa Clara. Do you think that the two best teams here, talking Seattle and the New England Patriots, do you believe they're the two best?
I believe that if Bo Nix, and this is just my opinion, that if Bo Nix was healthy for Denver, I believe it would have been Denver and Seattle in that Super Bowl. I just honestly believed more in Sean Payton and what the Denver Broncos had put up to that point. But when you look at New England's body of work, 9-0 on the road or on a neutral field, they have stepped up in every road element. You could say that it's been backup quarterbacks and coaches and all of this, but at the end of the day, you still have to win these games. So I would have picked Denver if Bo Nix was healthy, but seeing what we see now, Mike Vrabel's done a fantastic job in New England, and Sam Darnold has answered all the critics with his play last week against the LA Rams.
So let's go to Seattle. What do you think the keys are for them in this ball game heading into this game next Sunday?
Again, I think it will come down for them. Balance. Kenneth Walker had the rushing yards going in the first half against LA. They were able to work off a play action. They won the turnover battle. I think that's important as well. You know, knowing that defense, it's been 28 games since they have allowed a 100-yard rusher. They're going to come to play. They bring their lunch pail defensively, and they have the best player on the field in JSN. So as long as they feed him the football and held New England under 100 yards, I think they win it. But offensively, Kenneth Walker needs to eat in this matchup.
Maybe an underrated defense, but for the Patriots, what would be their keys going in? Drake May, if you really look at his numbers, Joe, not really all that impressive in the postseason so far. What do you think the Patriots have to do in this game to win the Super Bowl?
Well, we know they want to run the football, right? But that goes right into the strength of Seattle's front seven. I need New England and Josh McDaniels, to me, Dan, to be more aggressive on running situations. They can't go into this game and expect to run Ramondre Stevenson 25 times for only 2.8 yards per carry. They need Drake May to get through his number of potentially 225, 231 yards in this ball game, but they need to be aggressive on first and second downs, to me, to open up the rushing attack. It's not Drake May potentially throwing it 35 to 40 times. He could throw it maybe 25 times in this matchup, but it's when they throw. If they throw early on in running situations, I think they'll be effective. But if they're going to just line up and run the football between the tackles and get into predictable long third downs, they're going to get blown out in this matchup.
You know, you hear a lot of people always saying that you need offensive-minded coaches. You have two guys in the room here that, you know, I mean, they're defensive-minded guys. Who do you think has the advantage here, Mike Macdonald or Mike Vrabel in this ball game?
Oh, this is a tough one, right? Because you would give the edge to Vrabel based off of the Super Bowl experience as a player, being in this environment, understanding what he has to do. But if we're talking just play callers, I give the edge to Kubiak and how he's been able to out-game plan some of the best defenses throughout the playoffs, right, and put up dominant performances. The way they utilize and move JSN into multiple sets, he's now in the backfield. You can't get a read on where he's coming. The route tree, the passing concepts for Seattle have been absolutely fantastic. So I would give the coordinator edge right now to Seattle and Mike Macdonald and that staff.
How about that? I mean, I never really thought about it until you just pointed it out, Joe. I mean, Josh McDaniel and Clint Kubiak, two guys right now who arguably could be the two best offensive coordinators, right? In
Absolutely.
pro football. Look what he's done to Darnold and look what he's done to May coming off of what he did with Brady.
Unbelievable. Both coordinators, again, McDaniel going back to New England, McDaniels has done a fantastic job. Again, they're more methodical throughout the playoffs, but in this game, Dan, they're going to need to be more aggressive in the passing attack.
No question about it. What a great game matching up here, Joe. You're talking about really great coaching. You're talking about really great rosters. And, you know, the argument always, do you need an elite quarterback to get to this football game? Right now, again, you have really great football teams and really great rosters. And how those rosters are built, my friends, is through the National Football League draft. We're going to talk with our friend Joe Lisi on that. Is it the deep draft or not? We'll do that next right here on Sports.
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. Sports Grid breaks it all down.
They are locks. We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on Sports Grid.
Stack enough wins to avoid a brutal matchup path, and when Giannis gets back full burst, they got to get him back on the floor and back on the floor healthy. The Bucs season won't be defined by the game Giannis misses. It'll be defined whether Milwaukee protects him from himself and gets him back in April if he's still a part of the team.
Pro basketball today. Only on Sports Grid.
ESPN are not going to take shots or criticize him. People on Fox are not going to take shots and criticize him. But McVay had a bad game. Sean Payton had a bad game. And that's just a fact. Like, when they go back and review what took place in key spots of that game, Sean Payton cost the Broncos points and Sean McVay cost the Rams points. Those are the first two people that should be blamed.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on Sports Grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into Sports Grid and get ahead of the class.
You know, how these Super Bowl teams are built, they're built through the National Football League's draft, obviously, right? One of the greatest moments for all these players coming up in April. We're going to go to Joe Lisi here and get his thoughts on it here. And Joe, let me ask you right out of the gate here with this draft. Do you believe this draft is deep? I mean, as you're starting to evaluate it, do you believe this will be a deep draft? Or do you believe that this is going to be a draft where it's kind of thin at some positions and maybe not the quarterback position looks all that hot right now going into this April draft?
I think it's a good draft, Dan. I don't think it's a deep elite draft, especially at the wide receiver position. You have some playmakers involved: Cornell Tate from Ohio State, Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. Again, quarterbacks, we'll dive into them. You know, we know about Mendoza and some of the others, but again, elite talent and generational talent at certain levels. I don't think this is as deep as we've seen in the past 3 or 4 seasons.
Who do you believe is the, you know, I've been talking to you the last couple of weeks about Fernando Mendoza. You know, when you watch the national championship game, Joe, you're like, God, you know, the game doesn't match the numbers. And yet when you see some of the intangibles that you need for that position at the National Football League, progression reading, being able to dissect defenses, you see that the kid does that, all right? But then when you look at some of the numbers, you're like, man, not all that impressive. Is he the number one pick for the Raiders?
I think he is, for a couple of factors. Again, that run that he made where he's selling out, you want to see that from your franchise guy. Obviously, on the next level, injuries are always a concern. We see Jackson Dart running the football. But the way he took that game over, and you talk about the calm and being in the huddle and elevating the teammates around them. The other thing is, when you look at his body of work, yes, he was turnover prone in certain big games last year. But when you look at it, he throws an interception against Oregon. He comes back. He throws another touchdown pass to put them in the lead. He bounced back from adversity. Did that against Penn State. He did it against Iowa. So on the bigger games on the schedule, even though he made mistakes, he was able to overcome them and still put his team in a position to not only win the game, but run the table undefeated. And I think that's what goes unnoticed. I've told you this time and time again. Generationally, is he like Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels? In my opinion, no. But he is, in this draft class, in my opinion, the number one overall pick. And I think the Raiders would be wrong if they traded the pick or didn't take Fernando Mendoza to potentially be the face of the franchise.
You know, I am obviously partial to Reuben Bain. I played with his uncle Tolbert Bain at the University of Miami, and I've known the kid since he was a young kid, and he wanted to be a Hurricane from the beginning. You know, I text him throughout the year, Joe, and his motor, and plus he's been coached by Jason Taylor, which I think was really a factor in really his development on him being able to show some of the skill set that he has. What's your takeaways on Reuben?
I think he's a top 5 talent. Again, and we talk about comparison, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. He's 6'3", 275. You talk about the technique. The technique got better over his 3 seasons in college. And when you just see his ability to force double teams, if we're talking like comp, he reminds me of Jared Verse from the LA Rams, body type and just his physicality. I really believe he's that type of player. He's good in run support. And when you talk about a defensive player being able to take over games, 9.5 sacks this year, that's what Reuben Bain brings, plus a motor and plus the ability to step up in critical games on their schedule. I think he's a top 5 talent.
What do you make of the quarterback class? I mean, at the beginning of the year with Nussmeier, the kid from Clemson, Penn State, you're like, okay, these guys really came in with a lot of hype, but man, it really kind of faded. What's your takeaway of the quarterback class?
Yeah, I'm not sold on Nussmeier. Now, supposedly he had an oblique tear throughout the regular season, but he was turnover prone, couldn't push the ball vertically. Klubnik as well struggled with turnovers this year, didn't step up in big games. If we're going deep, and I'm talking rounds 4 to 7, I'll take a look at Arkansas quarterback Taylor Green. If we're talking about a difference maker, he's 6'6", about 215, 220 pounds. He can gain size. He's a Jaden Daniels type of player. I know the team was 2-10 overall, Dan, but when you're talking about generational talent, you could pick this kid up in the later rounds, develop him. I think he could be a starter in the league. You talk about one of the most explosive offenses under Bobby Petrino over the past couple of seasons in Fayetteville. Keep an eye out for Taylor Green. He goes with the right team. He could be explosive.
Man, I'll tell you, one of the greatest days in your life is getting a call from a National Football League team, Joe, when they call you and they say, hey, dude, how'd you like to be in the National Football League? And when you get that call, you look over at your grandpa and you do this. I think they want me to be a Buccaneer. And I'm like, all good. I'm ready to rock. Joe, thanks so much, my friend. I so appreciate you always doing this for us.
Anytime, Dan. Love the show.
You got it. That's awesome. We're going to bounce the basketball here now. Talk to 3-time national champion Jim Calhoun next on Sports Grid.
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. Sports Grid breaks it all down.
They are locks. We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh, my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on Sports Grid.
Stack enough wins to avoid a brutal matchup path, and when Giannis is back full burst, they got to get him back on the floor and back on the floor healthy. The Bucs season won't be defined by the games Giannis misses. It'll be defined whether Milwaukee protects him from himself and gets him back in April if he's still a part of the team.
Pro basketball today. Only on Sports Grid.
ESPN are not going to take shots or criticize him. People on Fox are not going to take shots and criticize him. But McVay had a bad game. Sean Payton had a bad game. And that's just a fact. Like, when they go back and review what took place in key spots of that game, Sean Payton cost the Broncos points and Sean McVay cost the Rams points. Those are the first 2 people that should be blamed.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on Sports Grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into Sports Grid and get ahead of the class.
This is always a privilege for me every time I get a chance to talk to Jim Calhoun. I'm born in Connecticut, and you got to remember something with that basketball program. Before Coach Calhoun showed up, that basketball program was nowhere in the Big East. I mean, the old school Big East, back when you had Nova and Georgetown and St. John's and all those teams beating up on my Yukon Huskies. But who came parachuting in? The man, Jim Calhoun, and he ends up winning 3 national championships. Coach, I appreciate you doing this for me here. Coach, that journey, man, that must be, again, every time I get you on, I love that journey on where Yukon is right now, a national power with another opportunity with Dan Hurley to win a national championship. I appreciate you doing this, Coach. Thank you. That journey, though, tell us just a little bit where the school's been. You got to be proud of what went on there.
Well, I came there from Northeastern University, coaching a kid. You might remember the name, God rest his soul, Reggie Lewis, and leaving that team in Boston. And, wanted to play, and you, Dan, you couldn't have said it better, against John Thompson, Rolly Massimino, Louis Condeseca, PJ, Boeheim, Rick Pitino. So I went and we got good fairly quick. We won the NIT my second year, which was a pretty big deal in Northeast. And then we started getting better players, and we branched out. The Big East was the Southeast Conference of football in one way. We were of basketball. Now think about it. 6 of the 9 guys that I joined as a coach are in the Hall of Fame. 6 out of 9. So every night, I crank it up. And there were guys like PJ and Calissimo and other people that, just couldn't. The league would not let you be great. PJ could have won a championship if they hadn't lost to Michigan on a bad call. But regardless, it was a special time. And the state bought it. We're a little different because most of the other schools are small Catholic schools, and we're a state school, and we're ready to captivate the state, fill up the building night after night, and most important get good players.
Coach, what do you make of the current group here with Dan Hurley? How good do you think this Yukon team, and how far do you think they can go this year?
Well, funny situation. They're 20-1, terrific. And the other night, I was coming down off the floor, and Danny was leaving the floor after an interview, and he kind of hugs me and says, "What do you think? What do you think? And what's wrong with us?" I said, "Let me read my lips carefully. You don't have the team you had in 24. With 3 or 4 of those kids, 4 of those kids, by the way, are in the All-Star game, playing the sophomore games, et cetera, et cetera. And in between Smith, the point guard, they were really, really good. And Klingon, big 7'3" kid, Cam Spencer, Danny, can he win it? Well, and I'm kind of jumping here, but he can win it. The reason they're winning these close games, not playing particularly well, is because, and it's going to sound funny, but I truly believe it. You know what winners learn? How to win. And you know what? You know what losers, teams that continue to lose, get beaten down? They learn how to lose. And everybody says, "What do you mean learn how to lose?" Oh, yeah, they're not going to foul that kid maybe with 1 second on the shot clock. Let him shoot that 3, get to a tie game and lose. Or any other things. And I don't mean that derogatorily. I don't mean that usually it's a talent gap or experience gap. What Yukon does have, the kid ball can really shoot the ball. Alex is a 6'7" guy could understand this now. In 5 years at the school, he redshirted his freshman year. He could win 3 national championships himself. That's pretty special stuff.
Wow.
I like our team, but the question I ask Danny when I go to practice, which I do quite a bit, who do you want to have the ball when it's, the time when you need that guy to make a shot or make a play? And I don't know if you said late. I think to some degree, he has players, but they aren't quite the caliber of the guys I just named who are playing in the NBA All-Star game.
Coach, what makes Arizona so good? Coach, to me, when I watch Arizona play, they look like they're using, physicality, and they're a big team. Look, as you told me in the past, Coach, because you educated me on it, you have to have a backcourt if you're going to win a national title, if you're going to advance in the tournament. But the one thing that I'm seeing with Arizona has big people. I mean, I watch them, like I said. I mean, they're just big everywhere. Are you seeing the same thing with them and why they're so dominant this year?
Yeah, I think they're the best team, but their youth might hurt them a little bit. I like to have a pure point guard. I like to have 2 or 3 guys that can pass the ball. But Arizona, they're really good. But I'm going to throw something in here. And I love Mike to death. He's one of my best friends, Mike Krzyzewski. But the defense right now looks like Duke's defense 15 years ago. They're terrific in defense, and they're a relatively young team. I see Carlos there with his sons, and he's a great player. His other brother is really a good player. But Carlos Ortez was a terrific player himself. And Duke is another team you got to be careful of because they win in tough places, and everybody wants to beat Duke, so don't pass on them. Michigan. I didn't see the Michigan State game last night, but Michigan is one of the best teams in the country, no question. The thing I like, jumping now back to Arizona, the coach who was at Gonzaga, remember, for 15 years, 16 years, they're coached up quite a bit. And when you get quite a bit of talent being coached up, you're tough to play. I really like them. I'm not picking them because of all the mixture. For example, Rick Pitino's team is starting to get going at St. John's. Why? Because they have 10 new players? That's why. And you just don't, where Yukon has 4 veterans. See, I think that's a big difference that people aren't seeing. Why is there kind of yes, the great teams that are still winning. Yes, there are certain names, and the teams with the most money are getting the best players. Okay, fine. But I think being a together kind of thing is incredibly important. And I don't know if we truly know yet, is in Illinois going to get better than what it has been? They're good, but I'm saying, is Gonzaga going to be back in the picture? As these teams, they're taking longer to integrate. So for us to look at, in early February, maybe the end of February when we truly find out who is the class, who are the teams that can get and win 6 games.
Coach, 30 seconds here. Am I seeing something here with young players, Coach? You see Boozer at Duke. You see Peterson at Kansas. A lot of young talent in the game of college basketball right now, no?
Oh, no question. I really believe that if you let these kids all grow a year, it would be back to being the special. Now it's very good, but we're seeing the development, not yet the production I'd like to see. The games are still good, except at times I go crazy with too many threes. Maybe that's because our guy in Boston Celtics, who's doing a great job. Yeah, but shooting 43 threes is a lot for me to see. I like to see a little more basketball, and not a shooting contest. But I think you're 100% right. I mean, there are probably 10 teams that are loaded with what we used to call, and everybody else did too, by the way, 5 stars. I mean, loaded with talent. And
Absolutely,
a team that emerges, the teams that emerge through that will be able to win their conference title and then maybe go on and win a national championship.
Thank you so much, Coach. I appreciate you always. One of my favorites from the state of Connecticut. Thank you so much, Coach. Appreciate that. Love talking to Coach Calhoun, 3-time national champion, and I do think this NCAA tournament is going to produce an interesting national champion. Adam Kaufman, back to football. Keep it here on SportsGrid.
I know you didn't. Talk.
I'm innocent. Got the wrong guy. It wasn't me. I didn't do anything. Okay, it was me. I did it.
Bringing an owl to an interrogation? That's a power move.
Every time.
Yeah. Hiring America's largest injury law firm for your injury? That's also a power move. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into Sports Grid and get ahead of the class.
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. Sports Grid breaks it all down.
They are locks.
We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on Sports Grid.
How could you tell the story of baseball without Clemens, Rose, and Bonds? You don't have a Hall of Fame if you don't have those three dudes. Sills, you know what, man? These guys took steroids. There wasn't a steroid test and a PED test in Major League Baseball at the time. Do you understand this?
Outspoken with Dan Sileo. Only on Sports Grid.
But I remember being 16 in high school, being in my school uniform, long pants and a tie. And I deadlifted 200 kgs. So that's 440 pounds. So, so that was, I actually have a video of it, so it might get leaked somewhere. Someone might be able to find that one.
We might need to get that one to B-roll the show in.
The Smiley Show. Only on Sports Grid.
The monster story of the week. You know, usually, as I said, you don't get any stories when it comes to the bye week heading into a Super Bowl. It's kind of like, we used to call it drag week. I mean, you're going into it and you're like, the sports stories are just dragging. What's going on here? Is there anything? And of course, all of a sudden, the bombshell dropped and Belichick does not become a first ballot Hall of Famer. Adam Kaufman joins us now here. And I got to start there with you, man. I mean, 334 victories. Where you lie on this here? I mean, do you think Deflategate and Spygate should have really played a factor in him not being selected to the first ballot Hall of Fame?
Well, first of all, I got to say, I can't believe I'm following Jim Calhoun. You're giving me a lot to live up to, so I appreciate that. But look, the Belichick news is fascinating. And I guess if, you could take a 10,000-foot view of the thing and you can go down any number of paths, including the ones you introduced. I think the first thing that you have to say on this topic is, I mean, truly what an embarrassment for Canton and the Pro Football Hall of Fame and its voters. If Bill Belichick, who has 6 Super Bowl rings as a head coach, 2 more as a defensive coordinator, has appeared in, 10, 11 Super Bowls, whatever the number is, and has, as you said, north of 300 wins and all these division titles and basically ran the league for 2 decades. If that's not the dictionary definition of what a first ballot Hall of Famer looks like, I don't know what is. I mean, how could any other head coach in the history of the league go in first ballot? And so it's a complete and utter travesty and embarrassment. And a lot of the voters out there have come out and said as much, other than some, very few so far, of the what has now been coined the Belichick 11 that have said why they did not vote for him. And I just think the reasoning is foolhardy. Obviously nobody is going to come out, even if this is true. Let's just go in order, right? Nobody's going to come out and say, I didn't vote for Bill Belichick because he made my job difficult for 2.5 decades, and he was mean, and he was a curmudgeon, he was a jerk, and I didn't like the guy and the way that he dealt with the media. Even if anyone held a bias like that, nobody could come out and say that. So then you go to the next level, which is, as you said, pardon me, Deflategate, Spygate, and various cheating scandals over the years. And what I would say to that is, part of me gets it, but another part of me says, there's no double jeopardy, man. I mean, Belichick and the Patriots were fined and punished for Deflategate, for Spygate. These things were ruled on the time. You are supposed to get in or not get in based on your credentials on the field. And Belichick's credentials on the field are inarguable. I think ultimately really the biggest problem here is that the voting process for the Pro Football Hall of Fame is wildly dysfunctional. It's not a process that makes sense. You know, you shouldn't. For anyone who doesn't know how this works, there are multiple committees, and you know, across there's obviously the players that are there for the first time. Then you get to the Veterans Committee, who are then going against head coaches like a Belichick and architects, owners like Robert Kraft of the Patriots, and these guys are pitted against one another, which is how you can have someone leave a Bill Belichick off your ballot and vote for Kraft, or leave a Bill Belichick off your ballot and vote for, you know, Ken Anderson. Is Ken Anderson more worthy of the Hall of Fame than Bill Belichick is? Of course not. It's ridiculous. But that's the way the voting, you know, standard has turned into here, to where these voters, you know, the however many of them there are, the 40, right? You know, or 50. You need 40 votes out of the 50, 80%. In order to get in, but you can only vote for 3 people. So it's not like Cooperstown baseball where you can vote for, you know, 10 on a ballot and you need 75% of the vote and all of these things. You only get 3. You get 3, and you got to spread them out across however you want to tier them and who you believe is most worthy. And then it gets sort of muddied in the waters of, well, is Belichick the most worthy? I mean, sure, but I'm going to leave him off because enough people are going to vote for him. He's definitely going to get in anyway. I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to spread my votes out to guys that have been on the ballot for too long and they're going to age off soon, and I want to give them a little bit extra life. That shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't even be possible. We need to vote, you know, the royal we, because I'm not a voter, we need to vote on the merits of whether a guy belongs in the Hall of Fame. That's simple. And there's nobody out of that, you know, 50 group that could possibly say that Bill Belichick is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I think you're going to see changes to the rules and the way that ultimately the voting is done going forward by the Pro Football Hall of Fame, because this is terrible.
Adam, what about this then? If they're going to go and use that metric, I've been bringing this up all week, doesn't that affect Tom Brady too? I mean, Tom Brady was the architect of, he was the executor of the architect, if you want to call Bill Belichick the architect of all those scandals they had in New England. Here Brady was the guy who executed them. Deflategate, Spygate, supposedly this helped him. I mean, actually, Brady was suspended, if I'm not mistaken, for 4 games.
He was. Yeah.
And Belichick was never suspended. Doesn't this affect his Hall of Fame status then, if you're going to use that metric?
Well, look, I said as much. I tweeted it a few days ago. I said if Deflategate, Spygate, and more so Spygate, I would say, is being held against Robert Kraft, and that's part of the reason that he's not in the Hall of Fame yet. We'll see if he gets in this year, but obviously he's been eligible for a number of years now. If that's been held against him, and now it's being held against Bill Belichick for at least a year, here's your, you know, slap on the wrist 1-year penalty. Don't you have to, for the sake of consistency, hold it against Tom Brady as well? So I don't think that's going to happen. But I agree with the line of thinking, and I'm not rooting for it. I'm a Patriots fan. I want all these guys in there as early as possible, pardon me. But I think if you're looking for consistency, then yeah, I mean, absolutely. Thing with Deflategate is, you know, where that gets a little confusing, this is a whole other conversation though, is, I mean, did he do it? Did he not do it? It's the whole ideal gas law and all the things, obviously, that have been talked about for, you know, a decade at this point. So we don't need to rehash all of that. But I think it does come with, you know, whereas Spygate was cut and dry and there was video footage and all of this stuff, Deflategate, in terms of the science behind it, it got a little confusing in there. But I'm with you. You know, there's a complete lack of you know, consistency and accountability in this whole process.
I look at those 2 scandals and think they're the dumbest thing that I wasted my broadcasting career on. Yeah. Talking about PSIs. I wasted 3 years of my life, Adam, talking about percentages of football and what a percentage of a PSI is when it comes to a football. I appreciate your brother doing this. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. By the way, just to add, if Bill Belichick has this 1-year penalty because of these scandals, and he was never even suspended, like you said, Sean Payton was banned for a year for Bountygate. How long's that guy going to have to wait?
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Sileo next right here on Outspoken.
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. Sports Grid breaks it all down.
They are locks.
We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on Sports Grid.
Stack enough wins to avoid a brutal matchup path, and when Giannis is back full burst, they got to get him back on the floor and back on the floor healthy. The Bucs season won't be defined by the game Giannis misses. It'll be defined whether Milwaukee protects him from himself and gets him back in April if he's still a part of the team.
Pro basketball today. Only on Sports Grid.
ESPN are not going to take shots or criticize him. People on Fox are not going to take shots and criticize him. But McVay had a bad game. Sean Payton had a bad game. And that's just a fact. Like, when they go back and review what took place in key spots of that game, Sean Payton cost the Broncos points and Sean McVay cost the Rams points. Those are the first two people that should be blamed.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on Sports Grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into Sports Grid and get ahead of the class.
I've been following this story in Philadelphia for the last 19 days. In hiring of an offensive coordinator, they interviewed 18 people. Did the Philadelphia Eagles? See, I think the Philadelphia Eagles have I think they have a Nick Sirianni problem. I don't think they have an offensive coordinator problem. I think they have a Nick Sirianni problem. When I look at Nick Sirianni, you know what I see? I see a guy who's a caboose. You know what a caboose is in sports? Charles Barkley says it all the time, and I love that line that Charles Barkley says. You're either a bus rider or you're a bus driver. And I think he's a product of that great franchise with Howie Roseman, the general manager. I think Jalen Hurts has figured it out, and I think Nick Sirianni is a caboose. So what do they do yesterday? Actually, on Thursday, they hire a guy, and Sean Mannion, he comes down from Green Bay. He has been a coach in the National Football League. Forget this. Look at that. 25 months. He has been a coach for I'll say it again, 25 months. He's been a coach in the National Football League. The Eagles land on that. No experience at any level when it comes to play calling. The Philadelphia Eagles just fired a guy because of no play calling experience at Kevin Patullo. 2 years ago, they had Brian Johnson in the building, no experience. And if this buffoon, Nick Sirianni, did make this hire, can I tell you what I think the Philadelphia Eagles are getting ready to do? Okay, Nick, you want your guy? You bring this guy in? I think you're on the hot seat now. I think what that organization has done right now, okay, Nick, we're going to find out what kind of coach you are. And I've said this also, that I believe this all week long. If Nick Sirianni and that Philadelphia Eagle offense in 2026, if that offense, if they go on to greatness, Nick Sirianni is going to solidify himself as one of the best coaches in the National Football League. If this thing lays an egg in 2026, Nick Sirianni would be fired by the end of the year. I believe he's a caboose. I don't believe he's this savant coach that many people look with that resume. And I bring this comparison up all the time. There was a guy that was a head coach of the San Francisco 49ers after the Bill Walsh era, and that guy's name was George Seifert. Well, let me give you his record. He was 105-35 as the head football coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He has 2 Super Bowl wins. He went to 5 conference championship games during his time. And what happened to him at the end of his time there in San Francisco? He was fired. Why? Because Ed DeBartolo, Carmen Policy, all of the executives in San Francisco thought he was a stiff at the end and that he was a caboose. How does a guy with 105 wins and 35 losses think of that in 8 years of coaching in San Francisco? That guy's not a Pro Football Hall of Famer. That guy's got more victories than Jimmy Johnson. And he's not in the Hall? Why? Well, because he went for a ride with a great organization that has a great culture. Nick Sirianni, in my opinion, again, you land on a dude. You give Jalen Hurts another coordinator with no experience. Make that make sense to me. Make that make sense. How does that make sense? When you're putting a guy with a Super Bowl MVP and you're trying to get the best out of the guy. Let me say this about Jalen Hurts over the last couple of years, ever since Shane Steichen left for the Indianapolis Colts head coaching job. That's when you saw Jalen Hurts at his best, when he was dual threat. He was running the football for 800 yards. He was making defenses and breaking their back, just unable to defend a guy. Why? Because how many times did we see Hurts in that 22 season where Jalen Hurts was making plays and he was stretching chains out with his wheels? If you take the legs away from Jalen Hurts, he is not an effective passer. Look at the last 2 years. A year ago, even in the Super Bowl year, they were 28th in passing. This year, they're 25th in passing. Explain that. The passing game has not gotten better. They have basically regressed in that passing game. So what do the Eagles do? And Nick Sirianni, they go out and they name a guy who's been a coach for 25 months. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. To me, if I've got a $250 million player, I'm going to get you the best people that I possibly can. I'm going to put the best coordinator that I possibly can. Doesn't make sense. You got a problem in Philly with the head coach, not the coordinator, Nick Sirianni. All right. In hour number 2, we are going to talk to somebody who was actually in the building for the Belichick vote, Jason Cole. Next, right here on
Heads or tails? Over or under? Seahawks, Patriots. Don't stress. Sports Grid breaks it all down.
They are locks.
We can capitalize.
We're going to see a ton of over money.
Props, expert guests, and smart insight leading up to the big game.
Oh my God, if Sam Darnold wins the Super Bowl.
Only on Sports Grid.
Stack enough wins to avoid a brutal matchup path, and when Giannis gets back full burst, they got to get him back on the floor and back on the floor healthy. The Bucs season won't be defined by the games Giannis misses. It'll be defined whether Milwaukee protects him from himself and gets him back in April if he's still a part of the team.
Pro basketball today. Only on Sports Grid.
ESPN are not going to take shots or criticize him. People on Fox are not going to take shots and criticize him. But McVay had a bad game. Sean Payton had a bad game. And that's just a fact. Like, when they go back and review what took place in key spots of that game, Sean Payton cost the Broncos points and Sean McVay cost the Rams points. Those are the first 2 people that should be blamed.
The Craig Carton Show. Only on Sports Grid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into Sports Grid and get ahead of the class.